Hold on to your goggles because right now we've got the epic engagement adventure. I am, of course, your host, RJ Redden. You know me, but you don't know this guy I'm sitting next to, and we're going to fix that right now. Sam Liebowitz, epic podcaster, epic podcasting teacher, and all around stellar human being is with us. Sam, let's talk to the people. Who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? Give us everything.
RJ, thank you so much for having me on your show, my steampunk friend. Uh,
Yes.
I love the goggles and the cape. So who am I? I am Sam Liebowitz. I'm the executive producer of talkradio.nyc, which is actually, it's not a podcasting network. It's an internet radio station. And I make that distinction. It's an important distinction because we do our shows live, and we've always done our shows live. I've been running the station, the network now for over 13 years. And that live component is a real key component. Now, granted, like any show, the live audience is always the smallest percentage because most people are going to listen to the recording and listen to it at their own time. But the people who listen live, those are your loyal listeners. Those are your biggest fans. Those are your raving cheerleaders who just love what you do. So we do everything live first, and we stream everything out live to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Twitch, and, our audio server. And then we record it, of course, and then we get the recordings up on all the podcasting platforms. Our network, our theme, you can say, is to uplift, educate, and empower our audience. And our shows are on all kinds of different topics, everything from business to nonprofits, health and wellness, society and culture, personal and spiritual development. Basically, we do everything except the divisive stuff. We don't do politics, religion, sports. Anything else is fair game in my book, but we like to try and bring people together. There's enough in society and enough stuff in the world that divides us and separates us. We really believe in bringing people together.
I love that. It's like Talk Radio NYC, nothing that will start a war. I mean, it's
Exactly.
beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, and what what made you decide, hey, let's start a live radio network. Let's start an internet radio network. What made you think this would make the world a better place?
I met a guy at a party. It's a very
Yes.
New York story. I was at a friend's spring party down in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan. And this other friend of mine brings this guy to the party and says, Sam, you got to talk to my friend. Like, okay, I don't know why. And I'm so like, what do you do? And he says, oh, I'm an acupuncturist. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I know a bunch of healers and not too many acupuncturists. But in his next breath, he was like, but I've decided to become a Buddhist monk and I'm selling off all my worldly possessions. Like, oh, that's kind of different. I was like, well, did you sell your business yet? And he goes, no, not yet, but I'm talking to some people. And I go, well, I network a lot. I know a lot of people. Maybe I can help you sell your business. And he goes, oh, that would be very good karma for you. He actually used the word meta, but it means karma.
Yeah.
And I was talking with him a little bit more. And then he says, oh, yeah. And I started this internet radio station last year. And I'm like, wait a minute. Acupuncturist radio station? This sounds a little familiar. What's your name again? And he says, Giorgio Rapetti. And I'm like, I know who you are because my friend Larry does a radio show on your network and he's told me about you, but he's never actually connected us before. So we laugh about it. A week later, I go into his office and we have this long conversation. I'm like, okay, look, if I'm going to help you sell your business, I need to know the good, the bad, the ugly. So he starts telling me about his acupuncture practice and like the challenges when the economic collapse of 2008 and 2009, how he built it back up. And then he started talking about the radio station. And I have a background in technology and in public speaking. And I was like, ooh, like this really interested me. And so by the end of this 2.5 hour long meeting, I was like, you know what? If I can't find someone to buy your business, I'll buy it myself. I mean, it's like getting two businesses for the price of one. And we both kind of laugh about it because I'm not an acupuncturist. I don't know anything about acupuncture. So I come home that night and I tell my wife all about the meeting and everything, and I'm all excited. And she looks at me, stone cold face, and goes, oh, forget helping him to sell the business. I'm like, really? And I was kind of crestfallen. I thought, oh, he's a nice guy. I can help him get in the monkhood. I'd earn some good karma. She's like, yeah. She goes, we may not have much money sitting in the bank, but we may as well put what money we have into a business that's actually making money. Let's just buy it ourselves. I was like, oh, what a great idea. Yeah, let's do that. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Nice. Yeah, and thanks for the distinction. Thanks for the distinction between, internet radio station and, just a
Podcasting.
podcast
Yeah.
type of thing. I think it's something that people need to hear. And so I mean, I've taken a wheel around in your universe. Tell me why somebody brand new would consider being part of a network like that.
So the thing is that there are kind of two types of people in this world. They're people who love doing it themselves. They love figuring everything out and putting it all together. And then there's the type of person who's like, my time is valuable. I'm an expert in this. I'm not an expert in that. And I want to work with experts. That's the kind of people I work with because they know their time is not worth trying to figure out how to get on the podcasting platforms. How do I do the music? How do I get everything together? How do I stream this out? And so we have kind of like a done for you solution that literally my hosts show up, they do their genius for an hour, they leave, and we take care of the rest. And when you're building a business, it's a lot of work to have a podcast, and there's a lot of different moving parts. And in general, I find it's best if you hire other people to do those things so that you can really focus on your business, on getting the word out there, on talking to clients, on closing sales. So those are the people who I work with because we make it easy for them. We're an enabler. And we've been doing it for 13 years. So we know what we're doing. We've got our system down and we don't have to invent anything from scratch. It already works. And it's like, why not? I mean, how much is an hour of your time worth or more? Sometimes figuring all this stuff out, it can take a lot. And then something doesn't work and you got to go on YouTube, watch all these videos and then still doesn't work and your computer crashes. And it's just such a headache. And so with us, it's like, let us handle all that. Let's us take those headaches away from you. You just focus on your content.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you why that's important to people like me is that okay, I'm reasonably techie, well, maybe a bit more than reasonably, uh, but I remember getting the podcast going, and even now I have people that help me. Sarah, hello. She's watching the video, and she edits it for me into little micro content that I can use later. But like all of the moving parts, you can, if you want, spend time on all those moving parts. But if people were able to free up that time and focus on their message instead, I think they'd get a lot more out of the podcast in
Right.
terms of incoming clients and incoming partners and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We spend so much time on the construction side of things sometimes with marketing, and especially if somebody's doing it all themselves, that we forget the message is the key component. It doesn't matter how many ears hear my voice if I'm saying nothing.
It's also a lot of people don't have a good structure of like, well, how do I start? Who am I talking to? How do I do this? And how do I do that? And we have that system already. I mean, when a new host comes to me, it's like we start working on the basics. What's the title going to be? Your show description. Who are you talking to? What time works well for you? All these little pieces that got to come together. The music you want to use. What kind of equipment should you have? All these little pieces, they all add up to either a professional or not so professional image. And you want to, if you're going to be putting yourself out there, you want people to think you're a real professional, that you've got things handled, because let's face it, professionals are who make more money. Amateurs don't make a lot of money. Professionals make money. So you want to have as professional appearance as possible. I mean, I don't have a green screen, so like my image right now looks kind of funky because I like using my virtual background, and my background without it is but I'm more of a Zoom person. Zoom, it works really well on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I will agree with you that, for me, professional means that the runway is slick. The way to get into things is easy, trouble-free, almost thought-free. For guests on my podcast, I want that to be there. I could spend my entire time doing that, or I could just get help. And
Right.
I have chosen to get help.
And the other thing too is that professionalism also shows that you care. It speaks to your audience on an unconscious level, that it shows like you actually care what you're delivering to them. That's not a second thought, that it's not a side thing, that it actually means something to you.
I I got in touch with a guy a couple weeks ago, that really uses his podcast mechanism as a courting mechanism for clients.
Yes.
How many people use that for a strategy that you have run into?
A number of people do, but a lot of people don't think of it that way. It's kind of funny. I really have to do a lot of education when I meet someone who's interested in doing a show, because the typical mindset is, oh, I need to do a show. I need to get 1 million listeners. Nah, you don't need to get 1 million listeners. For some people, they don't even care how many listeners they get, because it's more about using their show as a business tool, as a business building tool. Like, perhaps they meet somebody who they feel would be a good referral source for them. So they want them to like them. So they have them come on their show so they can start building a relationship. A show is a great way to offer somebody something without asking for anything in return. You're saying, hey, look, come on on, let me interview you. Let me allow you to speak to my audience and promote you. And now that person who's being interviewed says, oh, what a nice guy, what a good person. And now when you follow up with them, you're like, hey, it was great having you on the show. And they're like, yeah, it was wonderful being on your show. You're like, oh, I have some ideas, maybe ways we could work together or joint venture on something or do whatever. And so then having them on your show is like a qualifier.
Yep.
And like, after, whether it's a half-hour show or an hour show, like after having them on your show, like whether you would like to work with this person or not. And so if they're like an awful guest and they don't listen to you and then this and that, then it's like, oh, I'm definitely not asking this person. But if they're a really good guest and you're like, oh, this is the person, this is someone I want to work with, it makes it very obvious. So that's one way to use a show. There are many, many different ways. Some people are using a show as a social media strategy, just to give them material to reach out to their following, that they don't feel like they're selling people every single week. That high pressure sales stuff, it just doesn't work anymore. I mean, I've been saying this for decades, and then finally it took a pandemic for these social media, for these online marketing people to finally say, oh no, it's not about the sale, it's all about giving value and providing content and stuff. I've been saying that for years, and finally the rest of the world caught up with me.
Oh yeah. Well, and sad that it took what it took, but grateful to be on this side.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were chatting a little bit earlier about AI and different aspects of it, and how, and not only are those really difficult sales tactics being phased out. But the world is really kind of going towards that customization and personalization. And a podcast is a hugely personal thing. And I don't think a lot of people get that, Sam.
Absolutely. Because here's the thing, when people like, blogs are great, but when somebody hears your voice, they connect with you on an emotional level.
Yes.
They resonate with you, or they don't, but it's very, very clear. And so when you're putting your voice out there, it's one of the most powerful tools that we have. And that's why I love what I do, because I know how much like this can help people find those people who resonate with their voice and with their message.
Hmm. It's the truth. I mean, I had a voice teacher once back in my huge acting career. Anyway, I had a voice teacher once tell me that your voice is actually the only part of you that physically touches someone,
Right.
because it's actually physically touching. I mean, even though we are not in the same state
Right.
at all, that contact is still happening. And I also think of, concerts that I've been to when people are singing my favorite music at the top of their lungs. All of that stuff, that's a resonation that only happens in an audio or
Right.
a video format. But when it's strictly audio, it's different than other kinds of communication.
Right. And it's more than just a physical connection. I would say it's almost an energetic connection, right? Because when you hear somebody's voice, you can kind of feel them in your body a little bit more.
Mhm.
Like when you're reading something they wrote, it's a very mental process. It's all up here. But when you hear someone, then you really feel them in your body. You can feel their energy. You can feel whether it feels expansive, or it feels contractive, or it feels open, or it feels closed. And that's so valuable. It's so valuable.
If I ever write a book, Sam, I'm doing my own voice, doing the audiobook,
Audiobook. Yep. Yeah.
because this is so much more effective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great way to connect with people.
Well, and speaking of connection, I always ask on this podcast the big question: how do you engage your audience, Sam?
So with me, I mean, I do it through my show, and it's through the live aspect of my show, and I have a handful of a bunch of loyal listeners that I know, like even earlier today when I was doing my show, there was my loyal listeners tuning in, and they'll put in messages in the live streams on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll always recognize them, and I'll always include their comments or questions within the show, and then I answer them. And that builds so much loyalty and so much engagement. It's amazing. And it's such a great opportunity. So, first it's live, and then it's recognizing those people who are listening live, especially the ones who come back week after week after week. I mean, those are your biggest fans, and those are the people you really want to make sure to recognize.
And, I mean, for me, it is about recognizing who's spending their time. Time is the one asset you just don't get back. Money you
Absolutely.
can make again, time you can't. And
Right.
if you've chosen to tune in, if you've chosen to listen, that's a big deal to me.
Right.
I want to know how you're feeling. Did you learn
Right.
anything?
Right.
What happened? And
What are
so
your questions, right? That's I ask every week. What are your questions around this topic, what we're talking about?
exactly. It's a it's not just, and many people think of podcasts and other mediums, but podcasts especially, as kind of a top down I'm the teacher and my listeners are the students. I don't love the top down mentality a whole
No.
lot. What I'd rather do always is co-create with the
Right.
audience.
Right. And be inclusive. Really be inclusive with your audience. And I'll give you a little nugget here, which is something that, like anyone who's doing a podcast, this is like key number one. You should always be asking yourself, is what I am saying, is what I'm talking about adding value to my audience? If it's not adding value, why are you talking? Because your audience doesn't care about what you had for lunch yesterday or where you went on vacation. They care about something that touches their heart. They care about something that lifts them up or takes them deeper. And I hear so many podcasts where, my God, the hosts are like talking, not yours, but the hosts are talking about nonsense and about things that nobody cares about. And it's no wonder that they end up not having that big an audience or not doing that many shows. Because if they're doing it in a way almost for a self-centered, selfish point of view, but when you're doing it from a audience-centric point of view, then you'll always create value. You'll always do a good show. You'll always bring something that people will want to listen to.
Well, and when you do just, what you're talking about is not rocket science. It doesn't demand a team of experts. It
Right.
can be as simple as what you said, asking your audience what they think and what their questions are.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you can even start engaging them before your show. Like, you send out your newsletter and say, hey, here's my upcoming show. This is the topic. Put in there a little line and say, hey, if you have questions about this, you want me to make sure to ask, email me and I'll make sure to ask them during my show. Just make the offer. And you may not get any emails, but if you do, that's gold. And you know what? Even if people don't respond, just the fact that you ask and you put that in there will mean a tremendous amount to them.
Right. Because it goes from, come listen to me interview endless people who I think are really cool. It goes from that to, hey, I helped create that in a small way.
It's like,
I
hey, join the
contributed.
conversation.
Exactly. Would you, I mean, as a person who helps a lot of beginning people, construct and design their podcasts and help put them on, would you advise that anyone not do that? I mean, is that advice, the co-creation, join into this process, is that advice truly good for everyone?
I believe so. I absolutely believe so. I mean, you may not want to do it, and that's your choice. I mean, the key thing is that whatever choice you make around that you're doing it consciously, that you're
Mhm.
very specific and you have a reason why you do or don't do it. I mean, to me, you need to have a really good reason not to do it, because if you it, because it just it helps so many people in so many ways. I believe everyone should do it, but that's me.
Yeah.
Somebody else might have a different take on it.
Well, and my audience are heart-driven people. We love to make waves, positive ones in other people's lives. And that's the bottom line. So I believe that your advice will be well taken in this particular crowd. Uh, Gosh, that's awesome. Okay, now we should talk about your assessment. Do you
Mm.
want to share a few words about this? And I will drop the link.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, I created this assessment because I wanted to give people a little bit of a tool to help them reflect on, like, where they are on their journey to creating a podcast or an online show. And and I used to teach a course called Podcast Your Passion. That's why the Podcast Your Passion is in the URL. And it's really a good self-assessment test where it looks at different aspects and has you rate yourself on it. And it's a good way for you to just kind of think about maybe some aspects of doing a show that you haven't thought about yourself. and I've gotten tremendous feedback. People love this assessment. I mean, it's it's like a $250 assessment that I'm giving to your audience for free.
Thank
Um,
you on
that
behalf of all of us.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. But I've gotten a lot of positive feedback that it really helped people to crystallize and really see where they are in their process of creating a show or developing a show, and where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and what maybe they haven't even considered in the past that they should start considering.
Yeah, gosh. This is so important. This is so important. You know, they say when you're packing for a vacation, half the clothes, twice the money. And when what I would say for this is, hey, when you're planning your podcast, you know, you don't need the fanciest equipment in the world to start, but that's where people spend their money. I would
Yep.
spend my time on something like this assessment right here. I'll let me point in the right direction here. There it is. It's also that little line rolling across the screen, and I put it in the chat too. Folks, it's okay to take advantage of this. Uh,
Yes.
you know, you need to have a focus and a direction. If you don't have a focus and a direction when you're driving, you're gonna hit a tree. You know what I mean? If you don't have a focus and a direction when you're walking somewhere, you're gonna get lost. But if you have the focus and the direction that this assessment will give you, you can go far.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And look, this assessment is valuable, whether you work with me or not, whether you want to talk with me or not. It's going to give you a very valuable perspective. So I highly recommend take the time and be thoughtful about your answers. Like, just don't answer necessarily like the first thing off the top of your head. Really think about it and consider, where are you on the scale of the questions.
Yeah. Beautiful. I mean, that's an incredible gift, Sam. That's going to be great for great for the audience. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, I love podcasts. Thinking about starting another one. I'm all over it. I'm a content machine over here.
Yep.
But I mean, this is something that will help you know if you're stepping in the right water, know if you're going in the right direction. And so, gosh, I want to say thanks. Thanks for being here, Sam. Thanks for giving us some of that awesome experience that you have that is way, way beyond mine.
Mm.
And I want to thank you too for offering that system where people can really get educated about where they're going, what they're doing, and offering that service where people can take the pain out of podcasting and focus on their message. I think that's amazing, man.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, RJ. It's such a pleasure. It's so much fun to hang out with people like you who are so authentic and real, and not a cardboard cutout of like what everyone else is like. I love it, and this has been fun. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and thank you to your audience for tuning in and listening. And yeah, and if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to me.
Beautiful. All right, my friends. Well, that's it for us this week on the Epic Engagement Adventure. Next week, same bot time, same bot channel. We will be back. In the meantime, my event yesterday, Unmasking AI, went so well that I'm doing another one on the 19th. So keep an eye out for that. And we're also doing Surfing the Tsunami of Change next week. We're talking about productizing your brilliance in a way that lets you, leave your desk a little bit more often. We'll talk all about that. And I will see you again. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.